Yuji Itadori just did the unthinkable and showcased his new power, Benevolent Shrine. Gege has left the whole fandom in awe about this new power-up. However, apart from a bit of speculation, we have absolutely no idea how this domain works. But what we do know for sure is that Yuji Itadori is the GOAT, and finally we have seen Gojo's prophecy that Yuji will one day transcend the limitations of the Jujutsu sorceries rankings in the same way that his sensei did. But in this video, I want to discuss the potential abilities of Yuji's New Domain Expansion, as well as how I think this will affect the never-ending battle against Sukuna. Now, a user's domain will always parallel that person's mind and nature, as well as the inner workings of their soul. However, due to Yuji being inherently a cursed object infested by Sukuna's soul and cursed energy, his soul is an amalgamation of both his own nature as well as Sukuna's ideals. Sukuna being the king of curses and the embodiment of what a cursed spirit is supposed to be, his ideals and nature were to inflict pain and suffering among the people of his world. And as we saw, his domain expansion is a reflection of these ideologies. Malevolent Shrine encompasses all of this, and hence we see that demonic structure take shape whenever Sukuna unleashes his domain. It has a mouth on every side with piles and piles of skulls and mutilated bodies surrounding the center. This obviously directly corresponds with Sukuna's domain and his innate ability to cleave and dismantle all living beings. Malevolent Shrine is purely a killing machine, where it will constantly slash and dismantle anything within its radius. Sukuna's domain also lacks a barrier, which makes it entirely unique from other domains. This is because creating a domain without a barrier is the same metaphorically as an artist creating art without a canvas. But due to Sukuna's innate instincts to kill and cause destruction, his domain doesn't need the canvas in order to manifest, due to the strength of his innate domain. We actually see this in the fight with Yuji, where Malevolent Shrine takes a different form but still has the same abilities. This is because the domain isn't just an ability of Sukuna's, and rather a representation or a visualization of his soul. Since the cause of this domain taking a new form was because the sparks of black were influencing Sukuna's nature, and drawing more potential from him, which invoked a slightly different version of Sukuna. And that is what makes Sukuna's domain a divine technique, since it lacks limitations and is purely based on Sukuna and his soul. Like I said earlier, his domain is a true depiction of utter destruction and chaos, which links back to the true nature of a cursed spirit, being pure evil and deriving from negative emotions. Now, like I said earlier, Yuji Itadori is soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy. However, his ideals, despite Sukuna's attempt to break it, still remain strong, as Yuji's nature is to save people, which is the complete opposite of that of Sukuna's. This contrast means that Yuji's domain will also be the opposite of Sukuna's, hence the name Benevolent Shrine. The word malevolence encompasses the entirety of evil, and generally implies a deep-seated, often unexplainable desire to see another suffer. Which I don't know about you guys, but it does seem to remind me of a special someone in Jujutsu Kaisen, if you know what I'm saying. Obviously, I'm talking about Sukuna here, who, due to being the malevolent one, brought upon a shrine which personifies this. On the contrary, benevolence is the desire to do good to others, or in other words, the quality of being kind and caring. This sums up Yuji's ideals, and hence his domain will reflect this, and is why we gave it the name Benevolent Shrine, meaning that potentially rather than spreading pain and destruction, Yuji's domain will instead heal and protect the users from within, making it a perfect counter towards all evil entities. The reason for this power up is domains are essentially a user opening up their soul's innate technique. Like I said earlier, this innate technique is a reflection of a person's ideals and nature. For example, you had Higuruma's domain expansion, which was a reflection of his strong sense of justice, hence that courtroom being his domain expansion. So with the recurring theme that Yuji's intentions is to give everyone proper deaths, perhaps this domain will give the user the opportunity to reach that goal. This could also link to why we see Sukuna back inside of his Yuji Sukuna form, and we also saw that Yuji and Sukuna were fully healed whilst in this domain expansion. This is because Yuji's domain could cause Sukuna to relive certain events in his life, which would mean that he can die without regrets. The reason I say this is because we have seen from most of the notable deaths thus far in Jujutsu Kaisen that people are dying with many regrets, and it was even stated by Gojo that but there is no sorcerer that doesn't die without them. However, Yuji, being the benevolent one, is going to change this fate bestowed upon jujutsu sorcerers and allowing them to have a new chance or a reawakening to live the rest of their lives or die without feeling that regret. Since the soul is the core of a person's inner emotions, Yuji will be able to alter a soul freely from within this domain. This is due to Yuji's deeper understanding of the soul being greater than any other character in the series, and this is also why we have seen him throughout the show being able to have great control over not only his own soul but the boundary between other people's bodies and their soul. This likely derives from Kenjaku creating Yuji to be able to hold Sukuna's soul and to be able to temporarily overpower this in order to suppress Sukuna, since we know that Sukuna also has a large amount of control over his soul and was able to equally distribute it and his cursed energy among his 20 fingers before he died. This idea brings the story full circle, since the idea that Yuji's control over the soul was key to him overcoming Mahito in their battle, with them being natural enemies and Yuji's first big fight. So naturally, this domain is a perfect counter to Sukuna, as with his enhanced control over the soul within this domain, Yuji will be able to get to Megumi in order to separate him from Sukuna and finally free Megumi. This was actually foreshadowed in the chapter itself, with Sukuna stating that the most deadly attack Yuji can bring out is the one that targets a barrier between him and Megumi's soul, and that as long as Yuji doesn't land this attack, Sukuna can ultimately defeat Yuji. But the narrator stated before that a domain is a guaranteed hit, likely implying that within the domain, similar to Mahito, Yuji can control Sukuna's soul due to the nature of a domain being a guaranteed hit on the user. In terms of the abilities of Benevolent Shrine, I already discussed the ability for Yuji to control a user's soul. However, it may also have the ability to nullify any other domain. Now, technically speaking, every single domain has the ability to nullify another domain. Since the stronger domain or the quicker you release a domain, the other domain in the area will be broken. So technically speaking, you already have the ability to nullify another user's domain. However, this is going to be unique because from within the domain, rather than destroying another user's domain, he's going to make it impossible for them to open it in the first place. This is because the soul is directly linked to the domain. But with Yuji being able to alter the nature of a user's soul in this domain, perhaps he will have the ability to nullify all domains as well as evil intent, as the word benevolent implies that Yuji may be cleansing evil to spread kindness, which is the opposite intention of malevolence. Now, I'm sure you all noticed in the chapter itself, but Yuji's domain is set inside of a train station, which could very well mean that Gege foreshadowed this awakening all the way from season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen's anime, inside of the very opening itself. The scene when the finger blooms inside of the train as it fills up with water could imply that Yuji is this finger as an offspring of Sukuna. However, the flower is emerging represents life and change in the nature for this finger. The finger represents a seed which has been planted, and out as blooms Yuji Itadori, who is using Sukuna's powers, hence the finger still being the base of this new flower. However, Yuji is using those powers for good, hence the flower's awakening, which is a symbol of peace and tranquility. Now, I want to quickly discuss the hand signs that Yuji Itadori used in order to unleash this domain. Before you come at me in the comments, yes, I did get the name and the explanation from Anime Balls Deep, but I want to expand slightly upon the meaning and references behind these hand signs. So Yuji showed a symbol called Kalasvara Mudra, which directly translates to God of Time. It also represents having power over a person's mind and their memories. This was also foreshadowed by Gege from very early on in the story, with the unanswered mystery as to how Choso and Todo's memories were altered to see a depiction of a scene where Yuji Itadori was their brother. This was actually an early manifestation of Yuji's true power unleashing upon these two. However, since Yuji was unaware of this power, he was never able to use this ability ever again. However, with a domain being a sure hit effect on the user from within, it makes sense as to why within this domain expansion, Yuji is able to directly alter or reveal a user's memories, which is why I gave the explanation earlier about how this domain allows Yuji to alter a user's soul, since a person's soul and memories are directly connected. This means that we are likely going to delve into the memories of Sukuna, and hopefully we get a deeper understanding of Yuji and Sukuna's lineage. And it should also provide us with plenty of flashbacks and intel about the Heian era, which has been awfully long overdue at this point in the story. So we understand how Yuji's domain works, as well as why it is the perfect counter for Sukuna, but let's discuss what implications it is going to have on Jujutsu Kaisen's story and the ongoing battle in Shinjuku. Sukuna's character is obviously very flawed when it comes to morality and his sense of being. Sukuna's only desire in this world is to fight stronger opponents in order to appreciate the similarities to him in terms of Jujutsu sorcery, and that is the only sense of fulfillment he has ever gotten. Kashimo states that Sukuna is to be considered a perfect being, especially when it comes to strength in Jujutsu sorcery. This is because a perfect Jujutsu sorcerer has to let go of their worldly desires, which are essentially just human emotions, in order to become a perfect divine being like Sukuna. We saw with Gojo that the reason he was outmatched by Sukuna and ultimately could never have defeated him was because he was not the pinnacle of strength like Sukuna in Jujutsu sorcery, and that is because he still holds on to those human emotions and ideals. However, whilst inside of Yuji, Sukuna was forced to understand and see Yuji's ideals come into fruition. But this very situation caused Sukuna to have a severe distaste towards Yuji, as the two completely contrast each other. With Sukuna ignoring and letting go of all of his vulnerabilities and emotions, he allowed himself to become an unwavering force only capable of fulfilling and caring for himself. But Yuji wants to challenge this ideal directly, taking Sukuna into this one-on-one battle where it will be the clash of ideologies that we see here. Yorozu may have been no match for Sukuna, but she introduced the idea of love for Sukuna, who seemed incapable of feeling this emotion. Sukuna deems love as unnecessary towards his goals and rather just a waste of time. But his battle with Yuji will likely show him the importance of this emotion, and alongside those flashbacks with his constant conflict with Yuji, he will likely end up losing his sense of being a cursed spirit and will start seeing the inner workings of this emotion as Yuji teaches Sukuna that it is very important to embrace vulnerability and suffering as a part of life. I feel like that there will be no actual hand-to-hand combat from within this domain, and this is because we see that Yuji has gone into a form where he is literally just his normal self, no injuries, nothing to do with any sort of conflict that has happened in the past, as Sukuna is also back to his old state. So this domain could be considered a hallucination for Sukuna, which is the exact same thing which we saw in Choso and Todo, and that is why I say that this is the same ability that affected them into believing that Yuji was their brother. We also saw that Yuji put a hand out to Sukuna as if to beckon him to board the oncoming train, and whilst on this oncoming train, Sukuna will see depictions of past memories, maybe even slightly altered, and he will see the wrongdoings of his old ways. So ultimately this battle will likely end up with Sukuna realizing that maybe Yuji's ideals aren't as egregious as he once thought, and he might even be given the opportunity to die a proper death without any regrets. But I see this as essentially the end of Sukuna, and we will likely see the ending for this battle. Will Sukuna actually be affected by these teachings, or will he resort to evil and try to pull something off? Because this can go one of two ways. One, he either dies by going north, indicating a change in his ways, which would be triggered through this battle with Yuji, and consequently giving back Megami control over his body. Or the other possibility is Sukuna ignores all of this in the end, which is probably what will happen as he ends up escaping this domain and summoning the merger between Tengen, with the Jujutsu sorcerers having to fight off this huge cursed spirit as their final battle. Anyways, that is going to be it for this video. If you did enjoy, then please smash the like button and subscribe, as it helps out the channel a lot, and comment your thoughts on Yuji's domain expansion in the comments down below. But with that all said, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.